welcome everybody to the Iwama Dialogues and the Iwama Dialogues with Carl Thompson. Very welcome, Carl. I'm very glad that you can make it and do this. So without further ado, I'm just gonna introduce Carl Thompson. You probably all know him, but why don't you start with a short, quick introduction of who you are, Carl, please. Welcome.
Okay, so I am Carl Michael Francis Thompson from Carlisle in the north of England in the UK. I came to Japan for Aikido this time, but the first time I came to Japan was a mix of reasons. And yeah, I'm currently training in the Founders Dojo in Iwama, and I've been here since 2006. And yeah, that's basically where I am now.
Okay, so I'm curious, because I'm asking. I was there from I think 87 to, in 4 different times to 93, and my friends at that time was Luis Bernaldo de Quiros, Patrick Cassidy, and Miles Kessler, and Alan
Roberts.
Alan Roberts, thank you, and they were very close, and we had a fantastic time there. So I have tried to connect up with them through the Iwama Dialogues. That's what gave me the idea of doing these. But then I wanted a contemporary and a present day look at Iwama. And since you spent more time in Iwama than any of us that were there back in the 80s, 90s. So it would be loving to pick your brain about that. And also maybe have some comparative notes about back then and now.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. We've also got Natalia here, who is also here in Iwama right now. She's about 1 kilometer in that direction. So she can also fill you in on some more details too, especially as an Uchideshi.
That's right. But this one is for you, Carl. Good. The theme or my idea behind this is also really more than just the kind of practical thing with living in Iwama and the Japanese life and Aikido. It has more to do with, because I know we were very young when we came to Iwama, and Carl, you were relatively young as well. And it's for us, it was a very formative years. So it's really my interest lies in your development and the reasons behind them.
Well, I think that might be one difference between us, is because I wasn't really that young when I came to Iwama. So I was already 31 when I arrived in 2006. I felt young. I still feel quite young. I don't maybe look it so much now, but I had been through quite a few experiences in life. So I still felt like I needed to develop. So that's probably one of the things that made me kind of go for the dream and abandon certain other dreams for it. But yeah, it has obviously changed me. You can't come here and not be changed, but I don't think it's necessarily limited to age at all. Obviously, I can imagine it must be very profound when you're a very young person coming here, when you're going through lots of strong changes anyway. And I think that's probably, you're very lucky. I wish I'd had this when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I maybe would have had a smoother ride in life, maybe.
Well, if I may, Carl, I don't think it's, of course, Iwama is a big change from our home life, but and that's what I'm going to query you about, if you don't mind. I'm going to query you about that what led up to Iwama, what was your life before, and especially if I may start as far back as you can remember, because I usually find a thread through people's lives where actually where they're going is coming from an early age, and sometimes we don't even think about it. But when I start thinking back and I start looking back at the thread of where I was going, I find it quite interesting in the developmental sense. So whether you grew in Iwama or before, and it doesn't really matter. And I think we grew straight through. Before, during, and after, we're still growing, just by the sheer fact that time is passing. But so, if I may, because you said you've gone through some life experiences that made you up and leave, and what, if you don't mind, can you tell us about what led up to that, and what was in your mind?
Yeah, I can see like the thread or threads that have come together that made me come here. So you say start back as soon as I can, as early as I can. So so my childhood in a fairly isolated northern English town on the border of Scotland. It's quite a rough place, I guess. But when I say that, it's also quite a sheltered place. So it's not like you're going to get shot, but it is kind of place where on a Friday, Saturday night, you're going to have quite a few brawls going on, and school wasn't exactly pleasant, I think, not just for me, but for a lot of people. So I grew up in a situation where there's a lot of bullying. So that's my earliest memory of school, is just, that kind of thing. So I think I just found violence abhorrent, really. I found competition annoying. I didn't really want to be involved in competition, like sports, that kind of thing. So I wasn't a very sporty kid. I wasn't a tough kid or anything. I just used to like drawing and that kind of thing. So and I probably was maybe a little bit autistic. Like I really did have problems socializing, and I could be taken advantage of quite easily, I think. So going through all that, I remember thinking, well, I'm a pacifist one time. I just decided, like, I don't want to, I just find that abhorrent. So I don't want to be involved in that. But I still used to get beaten up. So eventually one time I just kind of snapped, and then I did have a fight. And that one I chose it, so I won, I guess. The bully involved realized that I was willing to fight, and all of a sudden, he's wanting to back down. And at some point I realized that force works. Force works. Being the bad guy, you can win. And it really kind of annoyed me. But once I got into my teens, there were chances to do martial arts or something like that, but they didn't seem to be open to me. Like, in my family, we didn't really do that kind of thing. We didn't do sports. We didn't. We got taken to swim, like that kind of thing. But it didn't even occur to me to really push for like martial arts lessons or something like that. But it was the kind of thing I was interested in, and I was interested in Japan because I started reading so I started to have an interest in Japan, interesting in doing martial arts. But it always was like something that I didn't think I'd ever get to do until I got to university. And when I got to university, there was an Aikido club. So I tried a few different martial arts first.
Where did you go to uni?
In Sunderland, in the northeast of England. That's also another northern English town with it's got some great people, and it's got some industrial history that has left a lot of unemployment and some troubles too. So, but I found Sunderland okay. I didn't really get into much trouble there, and I think that might have just been from coming from Carlisle. My accent wasn't so obviously alien. At the same time, it couldn't really be placed very easily, so I could just get by. And I think the way I carried myself was okay by that point. But there was some friends who did get into a lot of trouble there, and I got the impression that trouble could be more serious there. So I definitely wanted to do martial art at this point. So finally, it was very easy for me to just go to the clubs and societies and see what was available. So I looked at the Taekwondo club. I think there was another one, martial art club, that I didn't even get that far because I got to Aikido. So after watching the Taekwondo club showing their stuff, I'm not going to criticize Taekwondo. I'm sure it's a fantastic martial art, but for me, I saw a big guy who was just starting out. He was like me, just came to see what it was like, and I saw him kind of beating up a little guy, and I thought, it doesn't seem like my kind of thing. So I went to the Aikido club. It was fantastic. I thought, this is perfect. It's exactly what I want. This whole idea of, like, I used to want to be a pacifist, or I found violence abhorrent. This is a way of just like dissolving the problem, like protecting yourself, and you don't have to do anything horrible to the other person. You just control the situation. And I found, like, I'd already kind of tried to evolve to that kind of situation. I forgot to mention, at school, there was actually a judo class. So I did actually take part in that. It wasn't particularly regular or focused with like gradings or anything like that. It was just like physical education that happened to involve judo. So it was, a lot of it was just exercises and nothing like competition or anything. But yeah, from a little bit of that, I'd kind of evolved. Like, I'd learned a few arm locks and things, which whenever I got into trouble, I'd always resort to, because I didn't like punching people. Not usually anyway. So yeah, when I started doing Aikido, it seemed perfect. And by this point, we had the internet had evolved. So I could look up what is Aikido and find out about O Sensei. And I read the story of O Sensei, and I thought, that's just perfect. This is what I want to do. So yeah, I joined the University of Sunderland Aikido Club. First year, they were part of an organization called, I forgot the name of it now, Kobukan or something like that. But anyway, they kind of switched organizations while I was away on exchange. I went to Australia for half a year, and I was too busy there to really practice. I wasn't used to actually having to work at university. So I came back, and the new organization called White Rose, with Shane Riley teaching. And I seemed to make a bit of progress there, but then I went to Japan.
How come you went to Japan then?
So, parallel to this, when I discovered Aikido, I was interested in Japan, as I mentioned. And when I went to university, I really wanted to make the most of it. I delayed going to university for a number of reasons. I was mainly into art, but I went to the art college, and I just completely disillusioned with it. Like, the people who couldn't draw were lecturing people on all kinds of high and mighty arty-farty concepts that to me were just nonsense. And I just dropped out. I got a job working kind of in the industry, painting figurines, and I became an airbrush artist and saved up enough money to support myself to go to university, because the system changed around then anyway. The grant system disappeared, and you had to get student loans and things. So also during that time, I went to Turkey as well. It was the first time to go abroad by myself. I was really interested in learning Turkish. And at the university, I thought, no, it was a language scheme. I gave up my job as an airbrush artist, which I was very comfortable at, but I really wanted to do more with my life. So at the university, no longer earning any money, I've given up my comfortable life. I'm in a strange town. I'm just going to knuckle down and learn as much as I can. A lot of the art courses were really simple, so I had lots of spare time. So I joined obviously the Aikido club, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to do extra credits. I'm going to do this subject. I'm going to do that subject. Oh, and yeah, there's a language scheme. I'm going to learn Turkish. There's no Turkish. And then when the people from the language scheme came to our campus, this little Japanese lady named Keiko Okamura tugged at my sleeve and said, "Oh, you said you want to learn Turkish. Japanese is very similar to Turkish." It has got something in common, the subject, object, verb, grammar arrangement. But apart from that, they're completely different. But anyway, I thought, no, Japanese. Yes, Japanese. I'm just taking up Aikido. I'm interested in Japan. Yes, let's do it. and it was really, really hard. And I kind of, it was just because she was such a cheerful and patient teacher, I think that I kept going, really, because I was always bottom of the class. We had a lot of Chinese students at the university, and they came in and they all went up a level and disappeared. Then some more came in and went up a level and disappeared, and I was always just still stuck at square one for ages. But by the end of my time at the university, we sat the British exam for Japanese GCSE level. So I don't know if you're familiar with the British education system. It's like your middle school level exam. We had to go to a girls' school to take it. So it was me and my huge Canadian friend sitting in these little desks with all these girls taking the exam. But yeah, I passed. It wasn't a great pass, but it was okay. So that made me extra interested in going to Japan. And after I went to Australia, I think that really just sorted me out. Living in Australia by myself for half a year, I thought, yeah, now I can do it. I went through the whole culture shock thing in Australia, which was very strange. As an international student, I was like probably the only white European there in our group, and the rest of it was, people from Japan, people from Malaysia, China, mainly Asian. So I went through all the like the reverse of what happens to people going to Japan. People from Asia going to Australia, getting told, don't get angry about the price of rice. So I eventually saw this reflected, like people going crazy about, people from the UK and the US saying how stupid is it in Japan? You can't get bread, proper bread, and if you do, it's just like in a little packet and it's really expensive. And I saw that already reversed in Australia, where the counselors for the international students were saying, now, okay, you might get impatient that you can't get the kind of rice you like back home. You can't get this that you get back home, but it was geared towards a mainly Asian international student population. But it made it really clear to me, you've got to build bridges, you've got to adapt to the place you go to. So that really helped me, and it made me a lot more confident going to Japan. So after I finished my master's degree, I really wanted to go to Japan, so I applied for a few different jobs, mainly teaching English. It seemed like the easiest thing to do. So a JET program, and I ended up working for Nova. I don't know if you know Nova. It was one of the English conversation schools. They got into a bit of trouble after I left Japan. Luckily, I wasn't caught up in it with unpaid wages and things, and a big scandal on the national news. But anyway, it was a national chain. It still exists. I think they've kind of re-established it now. I applied for that. I arrived, and I was expecting to have to work really, really hard. I'd heard all these horror stories about how tough it is. And I did work quite hard, I think. I used to teach 8 English lessons a day. And when I went there, I just said, okay, where can you send me? And they picked a place called Hamamatsu in Shizuoka Prefecture. And it's still, I still think of it as a home. It's Hamamatsu to me. But yeah, it was beautiful. I lived right next to the castle. It had a beautiful park with cherry blossoms in spring. And my job was, it was a little intense, 8 lessons a day, but sometimes more.
You found the dojo there?
So yeah, that's the thing. Before I even went, I remember asking one of my teachers from White Rose, was connected to the university Aikido club, to write me a letter of recommendation. And it was a waste of time, I think, really, because there was nothing there that I thought was Aikido. Eventually I found the Seifukai. Are you familiar with the Seifukai Aikido? You'll know Yosei-kan, right? Yosei-kan. Mochizuki Sensei. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Aikido history lesson. Mochizuki Sensei is the guy who did judo. All right. Yes. Judo Kano student. Went to Iwama.
Strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to speed on that. So he's one of the people who was sent to Iwama as well. He was in Iwama too, way before us. And he founded Yosekan in Shizuoka Prefecture, I think in Shizuoka City. And his students kind of split after he passed away. He had two sons. This sounds familiar, right? The splitting, right? But anyway, for various reasons, they split, and so some of the students went one way, and most of his shihan and top students went another way and formed the Seifukai, which is Seifu is Mochizuki Sensei's pen name. So it's like correct wind, I guess. And the Yosekan is already like a composite Budo, so it includes Aikido, but also other martial arts too. And yeah, it's the same in the Seifukai. I went along, and I found it a bit tough, and I got a bit impatient just because it wasn't just Aikido. We'd spend ages doing stuff like from the other martial arts too. And because I did have quite a busy schedule, I couldn't really attend at certain times. So I usually couldn't take any gradings. So they start from 10th Q. And in the year I was there, I left and I still didn't even have 10th Q. But I'd been able to train a bit and get an idea of what it was like. And I didn't realize that at the time, but it was like a preview for Iwama. Some of the things that they do there are exactly the same as Iwama.
Yeah.
And things that I didn't think were Aikido too, because I'd learned in the University Aikido Club, which was mainly kind of mainstream homebrew style, but although they were not affiliated with the Aikikai actually. I didn't even know what the Aikikai was at that point. I didn't know about Dojo. I didn't know O Sensei had offspring that were continuing the line. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. So I didn't fully appreciate it at the time, but I do now in retrospect. It did help me out later on. Yeah, after that, I went to Australia again. First time I was in Adelaide, the second time was for university. Second time I went to live and work in Australia. So I kind of met someone when I was in Japan the first time, and she was from Australia. So that is my main reason for going to Australia the second time. So I stayed there for a year, and I trained with Brisbane Aikikai. And that was a really nice experience. I was kind of disillusioned after the experience with the Seifukai. So this was more of a mainstream Aikikai dojo, but it was a little mixed bag. So from what I understand, there were some people there who were familiar with Iwama, and others who were with followers of especially Shimamoto Sensei in Kyoto. He came one time when I was able to train with him, and yeah, it was a nice time. So I really enjoyed training in Australia. Yeah, after that, I pretty much decided I'm going back to Japan. I went back to work in the UK, and I was just saving up and get ready to move. I applied for the JET program for the second time. This time I didn't back down because I realized I'd saved it from the previous time. The first time I went to Japan, I knew it was just going to be in my gap year. So I didn't want to do JET because you can do for 3 years at that point. So I did the JET program. I asked for a placement either in Tokyo or Iwama. By this point, I knew Iwama was important for Aikido. And it wasn't just a style. I knew it was a bit of a complicated situation. I asked my teacher in Australia about it. He said, well, it could be a bit awkward, but, just see how it is. So I did. And I was lucky. I got a position in Mito. And you'll know where Mito is. It's just up the road from Iwama, 20 minutes away on the train. And that was in 2006. Arrived at the end of July, and I stayed on a farm for a week or so, and then moved in as Uchideshi to Iwama because my position wasn't due to start for a couple of weeks. So I met Inagaki Sensei, and he told me this is not a hotel because just saying I'm going to I'm going to stay there for a couple of weeks before my job starts. It's a bit like just using it as a place to stay. But, you know, I listened to his lecture. He realized I could understand some Japanese already. I mean, I'd done the lessons at university, and I'd had a year in Hamamatsu already. I'd studied hard when I was in Hamamatsu too. So, yeah, I was already in a reasonable level for conversation. But what he explained to me was very, very difficult. That being said, I did have someone to help interpret. But he's talking about the body as the vehicle, with the soul as the pilot. And Aikido doesn't just train the body; it trains that pilot too, the operator of the body, the mind. So for me, this is it. Why didn't I come here first? You know, like years ago. This is what I was been looking for. As soon as I learned about Aikido and learned about O Sensei, why didn't I just come here straight away? But anyway.
So when you moved into the dojo,
Yes.
were there other uchideshi? Were there any residing teacher there, or was it? How was the dojo set up in 2000?
So at that point, it'd been like this for a while. There are three uchideshi. Sorry, two guys from Myanmar, C29 and Mama Tan, and also a fellow from Mito named Mori-san, Japanese. So those three were already there. The two guys from Myanmar hadn't been there too long. They just replaced previous Myanmar uchideshi. So Inagaki Sensei was bringing over uchideshi from Myanmar regularly every year or so. At that point, they stayed for about almost 2.5 years, I think. And yeah, the dojo, as far as I could tell, just had a different teacher every day. The head guy was Iwama Sensei, Iwama Hiroshi H-Dan. He taught on Thursdays. But it was very much a cooperative, I thought, which is also, I thought, amazing. Yeah, I didn't come here just to be one person's student, I thought. I've literally come into a place where I get to have all these different people who train for Sensei. So, sorry.
Did Doshu come and train each week? Or
no, he didn't.
And Waka Sensei, he hasn't started coming at that time?
At that point, no. So the dojo cho was Doshu, and the acting dojo cho was Iwama Sensei, and that continued for quite a while. So yeah, we had on Monday was Inagaki Sensei's regular Monday class, which he'd been doing for I don't know how long, a very long time. We had Watiki Sensei on Tuesday. We had Wednesday was Nimoto Sensei.
How long did Nimoto stay as a teacher?
So after I arrived, I thought it was longer, but I checked recently because I responded to the Aikiwai column, and when I looked in my diary, it was actually half a year. Mm-hmm. So
because from our time in the late 80s, 90s, the people that stood out for us was the Dai Senpai, was Inagaki Sensei and Nimoto Sensei.
Yeah.
Nimoto Sensei was regular. He was on the mat more or less every day.
Yeah.
Inagaki Sensei came when he came because we understood that he was busy with his own dojo and work-wise. But whenever he came, we all tried to get him, which was a rush to get. And you were very lucky if you got to train with him. So
well, I felt very lucky. I did get to train with Nimoto Sensei, and then on Thursday, Iwama Sensei. Friday was Kubota Sensei. Do you remember him?
Yeah, very well. So very well. We were training friends. Very well.
Yeah. So he was an interesting character. He has stopped training recently, but he's retired. Yeah. But yeah, and then Saturday was Owada Sensei, and then Sunday was Hirosawa Sensei. So I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No, we never saw him back in the 80s, 90s. No.
Yeah. So he's often. Well, I was told he was the wizard, is how they Uchideshi introduced him to me. But at that point, he wasn't really doing that much magical stuff, but he did blow me over. As in, he took me to a point where I was just about toppling, and then just with his breath, I fell over. so he liked doing stuff like that. Later on, I saw a demonstration where he was knocking people over just by gestures, like no touch Aikido. I don't think it went down so well with a lot of the other locals, but his basic training was still basic training when he was there. And he was only there for, like, I haven't worked this one out exactly, but I don't think I had more than a year with him. Maybe almost a year, 8 months, I'm not sure. And anyway, I found him very fun to train with at first. And I went in there, I could tell these are all people who learned from O Sensei. Iwama Sensei and Kubota Sensei didn't learn directly from O Sensei, but it's literally as close as you're going to get to
Carl,
a group of people.
Carl, I'd like to ask you, because I see the thread in that, and I can totally identify with your feeling from when you were young of not wanting to do the competitive side of things, not want to have that aggression in you, and not wanting to meet force with force, and wanting to stay away from all kind of violence and aggression and all that. To completely get you there. And knowing now that since I've been back just a few times, and that's where we met. I've been back with Ulf Shihan from Sweden, and met up with you, and I realized that you're mainly, if I'm not mistaken, Inagaki Sensei's student, and because Inagaki Sensei seems to be the leading teacher in the Iwama.
Well, this is I think an interesting point. So if you ask me who my teachers are, well, officially now, my most senior teacher is Doshu Sensei. My dojo cho, my dojo chief, and my most senior teacher in the dojo is Waka Sensei now. But I consider myself a student of all the teachers in the dojo, and I see the other teachers a lot more, probably more often than Doshu, for example. But Doshu does teach regularly. Not right now, obviously, because of the current pandemic. He's been keeping away, which is understandable. But yeah, if you ask me who I've trained with the most while I've been here, who is the one that I mainly follow, it's obviously Inagaki Sensei. And I feel very much a product of Inagaki Sensei.
Yes.
And that's something I feel very proud of. But yeah, I'm very glad to have everyone else backing me up. One other point about Inagaki Sensei as well, though, is he is basically managed to be like the linchpin holding the dojo together without ever standing on a pedestal and saying, I am Inagaki Sensei, leader of the dojo. He's completely in the background, which is, I think, an amazing thing. He really doesn't seem to want to be any, what's the word? He doesn't want any cult of personality around him. He doesn't seem to want to be.
Carl,
like,
can I just hold you there for a minute? We are running out of our time for the first session. So we're going to go into a 10-minute pause, go and get a coffee or something, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. But I would like to continue this line of thought with Inagaki Sensei when we get back. So if you guys would like to hold off your questions, if you had any, just a little bit, because I think we're just getting into the Iwama bit, and I don't want to kind of give that up yet. I want to follow that through a little bit before we open it up for the questions. Is that okay? Okay, so let's turn this off now. Go and get the coffee, tea, whatever, and we see you in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Carl.
No worries.